Don't end up a nobody like your mom." The words hung in the air, sharper than the crystal flutes on the table. My brother, Weston, swirled his bottomless mimosa, pointing a manicured finger at my 10-year-old daughter, Alara. "Seriously, Liv, your mom rents, she consults, she is 32 and owns nothing. That is not a legacy, that is a failure." The other club members glanced over, amused. I did not blink. I did not defend myself. I just wiped a smudge of syrup from Alara's cheek and checked my watch. It was 11:42 a.m. By noon, his entire world would be mine. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I did not throw the glass. I did not flip the table. I simply folded the white linen napkin, placed it next to my untouched plate, and stood up. The movement was so precise, so devoid of the drama Weston craved, that for a second he looked disappointed. "Running away already, Maeve?" he called out, his voice booming across the patio, ensuring the table of investors 3 feet away heard him. "We haven't even ordered the lobster. Don't be such a snowflake. I am just trying to motivate you." I did not look at him. I looked at Alara. Her eyes were wide, welling with the kind of shame that sticks to a child's ribs for 20 years if you let it. I took her hand. It was cold. "Come on, Liv," I said. My voice was steady. "Let's go." We walked out of the club, past the valet who knew Weston by name but only knew me as the sister, past the gleaming row of leased luxury cars that Weston pretended were assets. The silence in the parking lot was heavy, but it was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a fuse burning down. I buckled Alara into the back seat of my sedan. "Mom," she whispered, "is Uncle Weston right? Are we nobodies?" I paused, my hand on the doorframe. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt something inside me snap. Not a break, but a locking into place, like a bolt sliding home. "No," I said. "Uncle Weston is loud. There is a difference." I closed the door, creating a seal of quiet around us. I walked around to the driver's side, but before I got in, I leaned against the warm metal of the car and pulled my phone from my clutch. The screen was bright in the midday sun. I opened my encrypted messaging app and found the contact listed only as Griffin. Griffin was Weston's chief operating officer. He was also the man I had hired 3 years ago to keep the ship from sinking while Weston played captain on the deck. I typed 2 sentences. "Activate the Aurora clause. Mandatory shareholder meeting at 3 p.m. today." I watched the message deliver, then I watched it turn to red. 3 seconds later, 3 dots appeared, danced for a moment, and vanished. Griffin knew better to reply. He knew what Aurora meant. It meant the grace period was over. It meant the silent partner was stepping into the light. I slipped the phone back into my bag. People often ask how Weston didn't know. How could he run a company for 3 years and not know his own sister was the majority shareholder? It seems impossible, but Weston suffered from a specific, fatal kind of blindness. He was the loudest man in the room, and he believed that if power did not scream, it did not exist. For 3 years, he had been emailing my shell company, Atlas Ventures, begging for capital injections. He wrote long, flowery emails about his vision and his legacy, using the same desperate flattery he used on his country club friends. He never suspected me because his narcissism wouldn't allow it. To Weston, I was just Maeve, the girl who rented, the girl who consulted. He could not conceive that the failure sitting across from him at brunch could buy and sell him 3 times before breakfast. His arrogance was his blind spot. He thought he was a king because he wore a crown, never realizing he was standing on a trap door I had built. I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. It purred to life, efficient and reliable. I checked the rearview mirror. Alara was looking out the window, watching the country club disappear. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the park, and then we are going to work." It was 11:48. Weston was probably ordering another round of mimosas, laughing about his sensitive sister, completely unaware that he was already an employee. The playground was quiet, a small island of green in the middle of the city. I sat on a bench, watching Alara pump her legs, swinging higher and higher, trying to touch the sky. She looked lighter now, the shame from the country club already fading in the wind. Children are resilient, but they are observant. She needed to know that her mother was not a victim. Weston told everyone I was a freelance consultant. It was a convenient box to put me in, vague enough to be dismissive, small enough not to threaten him. He liked to imagine I spent my days proofreading resumes or organizing spreadsheets for minimum wage. The truth was a little more complex. I do not consult, I acquire. I am the founder and sole principal of SV Capital, a boutique private equity firm. As of this morning's market open, my personal portfolio sits at $16.8 million. I built it quietly, brick by brick, leveraging the very thing my family mocked, my silence. While Weston was busy buying tables at charity galas to look important, I was analyzing market trends. While he was leasing cars to project wealth, I was buying assets that generated it. I checked my phone. Still no reply from Griffin. He was likely pulling the files now. My mind drifted back 3 years. That was when the hospitality group almost died. Weston had leveraged everything, our parents' legacy, his own credit, even the equity in the summer cabin on 3 luxury hotels in locations that market data clearly showed were cooling off. He called me late one night, drunk and weeping. He wasn't crying because he missed our parents. He was crying because the banks were calling. He was going to lose the title of CEO. And to a man like Weston, that was a death sentence. I could have written him a check. I could have bailed him out as a sister. But I knew Weston. If I gave him money, he would resent me. He would take it, burn through it, and hate me for witnessing his weakness. So I became a ghost. I created a shell corporation called Atlas Ventures. Through Atlas, I approached his creditors. I bought his bad debt. I injected $7.2 million of capital into the company in exchange for 60% equity. Weston thought Atlas Ventures was a faceless conglomerate from New York. He spent 3 years trying to impress the board. He sent polished reports. He used big words. He never once realized that the board he was terrified of was the little sister he mocked at Christmas dinner. I did it as a test. I wanted to see if, given a lifeline, he would mature. I wanted to see if he could become the leader he pretended to be. I gave him a 3-year runway to prove his character. I looked up at Alara. She was laughing now, jumping from the swing into the wood chips, landing on her feet. Weston had failed the test. He hadn't used the runway to take off. He had used it to parade around. He hadn't learned humility. He weaponized his relief. He treated my silence as permission to be cruel. He mistook my mercy for weakness. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Griffin. It was a notification from my banking app. The automated transfer for the summer cabin property tax had just cleared. Another bill I paid. Another asset he thought was his. I stood up and brushed the dust from my blazer. The 3-year experiment was over. I had invested in potential, but the returns were negative. It was time to liquidate the liability. "Alara," I called out, "time to go." She ran over breathless. "Are we going home?" "No," I said, opening the car door for her. "We have a meeting." The drive was quiet until my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text, it was a voicemail from Weston. I almost ignored it. My instinct, honed over years of avoidance, was to delete it unheard. But I needed to know. I needed to be sure that the bridge I was about to burn was already rotten. "Alara, put your headphones on," I said. She obeyed, sliding her pink headphones over her ears and turning back to her tablet. I pressed play. Weston's voice filled the car, distorted by cheap speakers, but unmistakably toxic. "Maeve, you really outdid yourself today, walking out like a toddler, embarrassing me in front of the board members. You're lucky I'm generous, but let me be clear, if you pull a stunt like that again, you're done. No more family dinners, no more access to the cabin this summer. You want to act like a nobody? Fine, go be one, but don't expect me to keep dragging you along." The cabin. The family cabin on the lake that our parents built. The cabin where I spent every July paying for the repairs, the insurance, the landscaping. While Weston posted Instagram photos of his sanctuary, he was threatening to ban me from a property I legally owned 50% of and financially supported 100% of. I listened to the message again. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a negotiation. It was a declaration of ownership. He truly believed he owned me. He believed my presence in the family was a charity he provided, a subscription he could cancel if I didn't pay my dues in submission. I looked at Alara in the rearview mirror. She was humming along to her music, innocent and oblivious. Weston hadn't just insulted me, he had threatened to cut her off from her heritage, from the only place that still felt like her grandparents'. Something cold settled in my chest. It wasn't anger anymore. Anger is hot. Anger burns out. This was clarity. It was absolute, freezing clarity. I didn't delete the voicemail. I tapped share and forwarded the audio file to Griffin. I added a caption, add to the personnel file. Then I reached into the back seat and pulled my blazer from the hanger. It was charcoal gray, tailored, sharp, my armor. I pulled into the parking garage of the Weston Hospitality Group headquarters, a gleaming glass tower that Weston liked to call his legacy. I put the car in park and slipped the blazer on. I buttoned it. I checked my reflection. The sister was gone. The freelance consultant was gone. The chairman of the board had arrived. I parked in the visitor's spot right next to the reserved space marked CEO. All right, Liv, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. We're here. Why are we at Uncle Weston's building? Alara asked, peering up at the glass monolith. It reflected the afternoon's sun, a mirror designed to intimidate. It's a building, Alara, I corrected her gently but firmly. Bricks and glass. Uncle Weston works here. He doesn't own the sky. We got out. I stopped her on the sidewalk before we reached the revolving doors. I knelt down so we were eye level. I straightened her collar and smoothed a stray hair from her forehead. This was the most important lesson of the day. Listen to me, I said. Uncle Weston is like a firework. You know how fireworks are. Alara nodded. Loud, bright, scary sometimes. Exactly. They make a lot of noise and everyone looks at them, but they burn out fast, and when they're done, there's nothing left but smoke. I took her small shoulders in my hands. I don't want you to be a firework. I want you to be a lighthouse. Do you know what a lighthouse does? It shines, it stands, she said. It stays in one place. It doesn't scream, it doesn't run around. It just stands there, solid and bright, and it guides the ships home. It's powerful because it's steady. True power isn't about making other people feel small, Liv. It's about having the strength to build things that last. I saw the understanding dawn in her eyes. It was a small spark, but it was there. She wasn't just a victim of her uncle's bullying anymore. She was an observer of his weakness. Are you a lighthouse, Mom? She asked. I'm trying to be, I said, and today we're going to turn the light on. I stood up. I adjusted my blazer, I took my daughter's hand, and we walked through the revolving doors not as guests, but as owners. The security guard, who usually waved me through with a vague nod, straightened up when he saw my face. I didn't smile, I didn't stop. I walked straight to the elevator bank and pressed the button for the top floor. The doors slid shut, sealing us in. As the numbers climbed, 10, 20, 30, I felt the last remnants of my old self falling away. The sister who apologized, the sister who kept the peace, the sister who paid the bills and let her brother take the credit. The doors opened on the executive floor. It was quiet, the hush of expensive carpet and serious money. Griffin was waiting by the reception desk. He didn't say a word, he just nodded and handed me a thick file folder. He's in the boardroom, Griffin said. He thinks you're coming to apologize. I took the file. Let's go correct him. The boardroom was an aquarium of ego, glass walls on 3 sides, a view of the city skyline that screamed expensive, and a mahogany table long enough to land a plane on. Weston was sitting at the head of it, scrolling on his phone, his feet resting on the polished wood. When we walked in, he didn't even look up at first. About time, Maeve. I hope you brought your checkbook and an apology. Then he saw Alara. His feet dropped to the floor. What is this? Why is the kid here? He stood up, his face flushing. This is a business meeting, Maeve. Get her out, now. No, I said. I walked to the other end of the table. I pulled out a chair for Alara. "Sit here, sweetie. You can draw." Weston laughed, a sharp, incredulous bark. "Are you insane? Griffin, get security. Get them out of here." Griffin didn't move towards the phone. He moved towards the door. He closed it. Then he locked it. The click was loud in the silent room. Weston looked at Griffin, then at me. I sat down at the opposite end of the table. I didn't say a word. I just slid the file folder across the glass. It spun perfectly, stopping inches from his hand. "Open it," I said. Weston sneered. "What is this, a bill for babysitting?" He flipped it open. I watched his eyes. I watched them scan the first page, the incorporation documents for Atlas Ventures. I watched them move to the second page, the cap table, showing Atlas owning 60% of Weston Hospitality Group. And then I watched them land on the signature line at the bottom of the page, Maeve V. Sterling. The silence stretched thin and tight. When he looked up, his face was gray. "This is fake," he whispered. You don't have this kind of money. You rent an apartment." "I rent because I choose to. I own 60% of this company because I bought your bad debt 3 years ago. I am Atlas Ventures, Weston. I am the board you've been trying to impress." "No." He shook his head, a frantic, jerky motion. "No, Atlas is a firm in New York. You're a consultant." "I am a private equity investor with a portfolio of $16.8 million, I corrected him, "and you are a liability I am tired of carrying." He looked at Griffin for help. "Tell her she's crazy." "She's the majority shareholder, Weston," Griffin said, his voice flat. "She signs my checks, and yours." Weston collapsed into his chair. The arrogance was draining out of him, replaced with a terrified confusion. But I wasn't done. I nodded to Griffin. "Show him the rest." Griffin pulled up a spreadsheet on the main monitor. It was an expense report. "We ran a full audit this morning," Griffin said. "The Porsche lease expensed as client transport, the country club membership as business development, the rent on your penthouse as corporate housing. You've been expensing your entire life to the company, Weston." Weston stood up, slamming his hands on the table. "I am the CEO. Those are legitimate expenses. I have to look the part." "You don't own that Porsche, Weston," I said, my voice cutting through his shouting. "The company leases it. You don't own your apartment. The company rents it. You don't even own this suit. The company credit card paid for it." I leaned forward. "You are a paper tiger. You look fierce on the outside, but you are made of debt on the inside. You built a life on money you didn't earn, status you didn't build, and a company you don't own. And today, the bill is due." Weston looked at the screen, then at me. He looked at Alara, who was watching him with wide, curious eyes. He realized finally that there was no audience left to fool. The glass walls of his office weren't displaying his power anymore. They were displaying his nakedness. "Maeve," he croaked, "we're family." "Yes, we are." The word "yet" hung in the air, heavy and threatening. Weston looked at me, his eyes darting from the expense report to my face, searching for the sister who used to loan him money for emergencies. "You can't do this," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'm your brother. Mom and Dad, they wouldn't want this." "Mom and Dad left us a legacy of hard work. You turned it into a Ponzi scheme of appearances." "I'll pay it back," he said quickly. "I'll fix it. Just give me time. Don't ruin me, Maeve, please." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was sweating through his expensive shirt. He was pathetic, and for the first time I felt absolutely nothing for him. No anger, no pity, just the cold calculation of an investor cutting a loss. "I'm not going to ruin you, Weston. I'm going to save you." He blinked, hope flickering in his eyes. "You are?" "Yes, by teaching you the one thing you've never learned, consequences." I turned to Griffin. "Repossess the card today, cancel the country club membership immediately, terminate the lease on the penthouse, he has 30 days to vacate." Weston's face crumbled. "My car, my apartment, where am I supposed to live?" "You can rent a studio," I said. like a nobody. "Maeve, please!" "And as for your job," I continued, ignoring him, "you are no longer CEO. You are demoted to junior account manager. Your salary is capped at $50,000 a year. The rest of your paycheck will be garnished to repay the embezzled funds." $50,000? He gasped. "I can't live on $50,000. "I do," I said, "and I support a child." I stood up. I walked over to him and held out my hand. "Keys." He hesitated. He looked at the Porsche key fob on the table, the symbol of everything he thought he was. Then he looked at Griffin, who was already typing the termination orders. Slowly, with trembling hands, Weston picked up the keys and dropped them into my palm. I closed my fingers around them. They were cold. "You're not fired, Weston," I said. "You're going to work. You're going to report to Griffin every morning at 8 a.m. You're going to learn how to read a profit and loss statement. You're going to learn what things actually cost." I turned to Alara. She was watching us, her eyes wide and serious. "See, Liv," I said, holding up the keys. "A nobody can sign the paycheck. A nobody can take away the toys. Power isn't about being loud. It's about owning the keys." Weston slumped in his chair, a man hollowed out. He had lost his car, his home, his title, and his dignity. But I hadn't destroyed him. I had stripped away the lies so he could finally, maybe, become a real person. "Let's go," I said to Alara. We walked out of the boardroom, leaving Weston alone in his glass box. The door clicked shut behind us, a final, definitive sound. As we walked through the quiet hallway, I dropped the Porsche keys into Griffin's hand. "Sell it," I said. "Put the money back into the company." "Understood," Griffin said. "Good to see you, Maeve." "You too, Griffin." We took the elevator down. When the doors opened to the lobby, the afternoon sun was streaming in, golden and bright. We walked out onto the sidewalk, back to my sensible sedan. It wasn't a Porsche. It wasn't leased. It was mine. The drive home was different. The silence in the car wasn't heavy anymore. It was light, like the air after a storm breaks. Ilara had taken her headphones off. She was watching the window, but this time she wasn't watching the world go by. She was watching the city skyline as if she were trying to figure out how it was put together. "Mom," she asked, turning to me, "is Uncle Weston going to be okay?" "He is going to be tired," I said honestly, "and he is going to be humbled. But yes, he will be okay. In fact, he might finally be happy, because for the first time in his life, he is going to earn what he has, and that is the only thing that no one can ever take away from you." We pulled into the driveway of our rental house. It didn't look like a failure to me anymore. It looked like a fortress. It looked like freedom. We went inside, kicked off our shoes, and ordered pizza. That night, after Alara was in her pajamas, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. My inbox was full of the usual updates from my portfolio companies, but one email stood out. It was from Weston. The subject line was blank. I opened it. There was no long, flowery explanation this time. No excuses about vision or legacy, just one line. "I will be there at 8. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I simply clicked Archive and watched the message disappear into the digital vault. The transaction was complete. "Mom, can you help me with math?" Ilara asked, dropping her workbook onto the table next to my computer. "Always," I said. "What are we learning?" "Compound interest." I smiled. I pulled her chair closer to mine. It's what happens when you do small, smart things over and over again, quietly, while everyone else is trying to hit a home run. I watched her head bend over the paper, her pencil moving steadily across the page. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She was just doing the work. She was building. My brother had spent his life trying to be a firework, desperate to be seen. I had spent mine becoming the sky. Vast, silent, and owning everything the fireworks tried to light up. I looked at my daughter, then at the city lights glowing through the window. We didn't need to scream to be heard. We didn't need to lease a legacy to have one. We were building something real, right here at this kitchen table. Success isn't about being the loudest in the room. It is about owning the room before you even walk in. Share this if you are building a silent empire of your own.